Sunlight filtered gently through the lace curtains, casting delicate patterns across the bridal suite. Isabella stood in front of the ornate mirror, brushing her hair slowly, savoring the rare moment of calm before the chaos of her wedding day. Today was supposed to be perfect, every detail meticulously planned, every smile carefully rehearsed. For months, she had envisioned walking down the aisle, radiant in her gown, surrounded by family and friends, with Ethan waiting at the altar, the man she believed loved her completely. The room buzzed softly with the quiet hum of her bridesmaids, laughter and whispers drifting from the adjoining suite. Her mother fussed over the final touches of makeup, while her best friend adjusted the train of the dress with practiced precision. Isabella smiled, nodding at their chatter, letting the sound soothe the nerves she barely admitted to having. Every corner of the hotel suite had been decorated for the day. Fresh roses, delicate ribbons, and the faint scent of vanilla and jasmine drifting through the air. Yet, despite the outward perfection, a sliver of unease lingered. Isabella had always trusted her intuition, an internal compass that rarely erred. And this morning, that sense prickled insistently at the edges of her consciousness, whispering that something was off. She tried to shake it, attributing it to normal pre-wedding jitters. After all, nervous excitement was natural. She adjusted the veil over her shoulders and took a deep breath, hoping the morning's nervous energy would pass. Just as she was about to step toward the door, her vision blurred slightly, and a thought, not her own, slipped into her mind. Clear, undeniable, and utterly shocking. I still love her sister. Isabella froze, brush still in hand. She blinked, thinking perhaps she had imagined it, that stress had conjured some cruel hallucination. But no, the words echoed, distinct and insistent, belonging unmistakably to Ethan. Her pulse quickened, her stomach twisting into knots. He wasn't supposed to feel anything but love for her today. Her mind raced, teetering between disbelief and terror. How could this be? Ethan, the charming, devoted man who had wooed her for years, the man whose smile could melt her heart. He harbored feelings for her sister? It didn't make sense, yet she could feel the truth of it in the intensity of the thought. She tried to push it away, to dismiss it as an anomaly, but the clarity remained. Isabella's secret ability, a gift she had always kept hidden, now became both a curse and a lifeline. For as long as she could remember, she had occasionally heard the private thoughts of those around her. Fleeting fragments, rarely complete sentences, but enough to understand the truth beneath the surface. And today, the thought she had caught wasn't fleeting. It was deliberate, persistent, and devastating. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed the brush down. She needed to act, but how? The wedding would begin in mere hours, the hotel buzzing with excitement, cameras, and guests oblivious to the looming betrayal. Every detail of the day had been planned. Except for this. She could not let the truth remain hidden. Yet a plan formed in the corner of her mind. Tentative but growing. She wouldn't confront him directly. Not here, not now. The stakes were far too high. Instead she would watch, listen and wait. Using her secret ability, she would uncover the full extent of the betrayal, protect herself, and ensure that when the truth came out, it would leave no room for denial. For now, Isabella straightened her spine, took another deep breath, and forced herself to smile. To the world, it was just another perfect wedding morning. To her, it was the beginning of a battle that would test her courage, her cunning, and her resolve in ways she could never have imagined. Isabella sat still for a moment, trying to calm the storm raging inside her chest. The morning had begun like a dream, but now the veil of perfection had been ripped away, leaving behind jagged edges of doubt. I still love her sister. The words pulsed in her mind, sharp as broken glass. She had lived with her strange gift since childhood, but she had long ago learned to bury it. The world wasn't kind to those who could hear what was meant to stay unspoken. Most of the time, her ability surfaced only in quiet flashes, stray phrases from strangers on the street, unguarded thoughts from family members, hints of what people really meant behind their smiles. But rarely had she heard something so deliberate, so intimate, and so damning. Her stomach tightened. Was this just nerves playing tricks on her? Was she hearing what she feared rather than what was true? She needed to be certain. The bridal suite door creaked, and her maid of honor, Lila, poked her head in. "ISA, the florist's here with the bouquets. Want to take a quick look?" Isabella nodded, forcing a smile. She steadied herself, inhaling slowly as Lila entered fully. She focused, not on the words spoken aloud, but on the silent undercurrent that floated beneath. For a moment, the silence stretched, then a whisper filled her mind. She looks nervous, but still so beautiful. I hope Ethan realizes how lucky he is. Relief flooded her. The voice wasn't imagined, it was Lila's inner thought, genuine and warm. Isabella's ability was intact. Which meant Ethan's whispered confession earlier hadn't been a mistake of her mind. It had been real. Her pulse quickened again. She dismissed Lila with a grateful nod, clutching the bouquet like an anchor. As the door closed, Isabella's mind spun. Ethan's feelings for her sister weren't a passing thought, not something harmless. They were deep enough to surface in his mind on the morning of his wedding, of all days. She needed to know more. To test him. Later, when Ethan arrived for the photographer's pre-ceremony shots, Isabella forced herself to play the part of the glowing bride. She held his arm, tilted her head toward him as the camera clicked, and smiled through clenched teeth. But beneath her veil, her concentration sharpened like a blade. His smile was perfect, dazzling for the guests and cameras. Yet his thoughts betrayed him. Don't look at her, sister. Not here. Not now. Keep your eyes on Isabella. Pretend. Just pretend. The word sent a chill racing down her spine. Pretend. He was pretending for her, for everyone. Rage simmered beneath her skin, but she locked it down, sealing it behind her practiced smile. Between photographs, she excused herself, feigning the need to adjust her gown. In the quiet of the dressing room, her hands trembled as she pressed them to her face. Ethan's betrayal wasn't a vague fear. It was undeniable. He still loved her sister. He was hiding it, burying it, but the truth was etched into every unspoken word. Her gift was no longer a burden. It was her weapon. She would use it to unravel his lies, to peel back every mask until the truth lay exposed. As the wedding hour approached, Isabella's fear hardened into resolve. This was no longer a celebration. It was a stage. And she was about to turn it into a reckoning. The hotel ballroom glowed with soft golden light, every detail orchestrated to perfection. White roses lined the aisles, chandeliers glittered above the guests, and the string quartet rehearsed quietly in the corner. To everyone else, the scene was flawless, a fairy tale unfolding in real time. But to Isabella, it had transformed into a stage of deception, where every smile, every glance, and every whispered word might hide betrayal. She moved gracefully among her bridesmaids and guests, careful to keep her composure. To them, she was radiant and calm. Inside, however, her mind sharpened, her strange gift tuned like an antenna, straining to catch whispers beneath the laughter. Her sister, Juliana, entered the room then. Dressed in pale lavender, she was stunning, her beauty drawing immediate attention. Isabella forced herself not to flinch. The thought of Juliana, the one Ethan claimed to still love, twisted Isabella's stomach. She needed to know the truth. Was Juliana complicit, or had Ethan kept his secret from her? Isabella smiled warmly, stepping closer to embrace her. You look beautiful, Jules. Juliana returned the hug lightly. Out loud she said, You're the one who looks beautiful. Today is your day. But her thoughts whispered differently. I shouldn't have come this close. What if someone notices the way he looks at me? I can't let her find out. The words sliced through Isabella like a blade. Her body stiffened, though she kept her face serene. Juliana knew. She knew about Ethan's feelings, and she had chosen silence. Worse, perhaps she had encouraged it. The betrayal deepened. As Juliana walked away, Isabella felt her chest constrict with fury. The evidence was piling up, not just against Ethan but against her sister. The two of them had kept this secret, protecting their hidden bond, and today they dared to stand before her as if nothing was wrong. But they weren't the only ones. Isabella's ability, once unleashed, revealed more than she expected. As she circulated among her relatives and friends, snippets of thoughts surfaced unbidden. Some were harmless, I hope the salmon isn't dry, others petty, her dress isn't as flattering as she thinks. Then came something darker. Her cousin Daniel, leaning against the bar, thought to himself, he's really marrying her? I always thought he and Juliana had more chemistry. Isabella's heart pounded. Others had noticed. Perhaps not the full betrayal, but enough to see the connection between Ethan and Juliana. She had been blind, but the signs had been there all along, hidden in plain sight. Her mind raced. She could no longer assume this was a private matter between three people. The betrayal had been visible enough that others suspected, whispered in silence, ignored by her blinded optimism. The revelation solidified her resolve. This wasn't just about heartbreak, it was about dignity, truth, and exposing the web of lies that had ensnared her. She wouldn't be the naive bride tricked into a marriage built on deception. No. If they thought they could humiliate her, they had underestimated her completely. By the time the ceremony was minutes away, Isabella had gathered enough to know what she faced. Ethan's secret love, Juliana's silent complicity, and the subtle whispers of others who had sensed it all along. She looked at her reflection one final time. The gown sparkled, the veil shimmered, and the bride staring back at her was no longer trembling. She wasn't a victim. She was a strategist, a woman armed with a secret weapon no one could see. Today would not end as they planned. The clock ticked steadily toward the ceremony, its rhythm oddly soothing to Isabella's sharpened mind. Every second that passed was another chance to refine her plan, another beat in the symphony of deception she would soon conduct. To everyone else, she was still the glowing bride, a vision in white. But behind her smile, she was a hunter stalking prey. She sat for a moment in the bridal suite, her fingers resting on her bouquet, her thoughts darting like quicksilver. Confronting Ethan or Juliana now would be reckless. They would deny everything, twist her words, make her appear irrational or hysterical. No. Her advantage was her invisibility. No one knew what she could do. No one suspected she could hear the truth they thought was hidden. And that was her power. Her plan took root quickly. She would not destroy the wedding in private. She would expose them in public, in front of family and friends, in a way they couldn't hide from. But first, she needed certainty, evidence, small cracks she could widen into undeniable proof. She began by watching carefully. During the pre-ceremony mingling, she arranged her movements deliberately. If Ethan and Juliana gravitated toward each other even slightly, the audience would notice. But Isabella's gift gave her more than sight. As Ethan greeted guests, shaking hands and offering charming smiles, she listened. Just smile. Just get through this. Don't look at Juliana too long. He was already coaching himself. That alone was a crack. Juliana, meanwhile, adjusted her lavender gown and poured herself a drink at the bar. Isabella brushed by her casually, close enough to catch the silent tremor beneath her poised exterior. He shouldn't stare at me. He'll ruin everything. If she suspects, it's over. The words lit a spark in Isabella's chest. Suspect? Oh, Juliana. I already know. But Isabella didn't show her hand. Instead, she smiled at a group of bridesmaids, chatting lightly about flowers and music while her eyes flicked across the room. If she played this carefully, she could orchestrate their downfall like a conductor with an orchestra. Her first move was subtle. When the photographer called for family-only portraits before the ceremony, Isabella suggested Juliana stand beside Ethan. After all, she teased sweetly, you two have always been close. The effect was immediate. Ethan's smile faltered just slightly, Juliana's breath caught, and though the camera flashed, Isabella caught the whispers of panic. Don't look at her. Don't reach for her hand. Ethan's voice rang sharp. This feels wrong. Too obvious. She'll see it. Juliana's thought followed. Perfect. The photographer, oblivious, kept arranging them, snapping away. To the outside world, it was just another family picture. To Isabella, it was proof gathering silently, seeds of doubt she could later cultivate into certainty. When the portraits ended, Isabella excused herself briefly, pretending to check her veil. Alone again, she steadied her breathing. The plan was working. Every thought, every slip, every flicker of guilt was weaving a web they couldn't escape from. But she needed the final act. Something undeniable, something that would make their betrayal explode in the open before the ceremony could seal her fate. The whispers in her head grew louder, fragments of Ethan's self-reprimands, Juliana's nervous guilt, and even the suspicions of others who had noticed their closeness. Isabella felt almost dizzy from the onslaught, but she channeled it, turning the chaos into clarity. This wasn't just about saving herself from a loveless marriage. It was about reclaiming her dignity, protecting her future, and ensuring that everyone saw Ethan and Juliana for what they truly were. And when the music began, when the doors opened and the ceremony drew near, Isabella's heart steadied. She was ready. Her wedding was no longer a promise of love. It was a battlefield. The air in the ballroom shifted as the first guests began to take their seats, the low hum of conversation blending with the soft music of the string quartet. Isabella stood just outside the doors, her bouquet clutched in steady hands. To the world, she was a bride moments away from her happily ever after. To herself, she was a strategist preparing the first deliberate strike. Her heart thudded against her ribs, not with nerves, but with calculation. The time for silent observation was ending. Now she would begin testing the cracks she had uncovered in Ethan and Juliana's facade, pressing them until they split wide open. Her first move came during the lineup for the processional. Bridesmaids gathered, adjusting dresses and smoothing hair, while Ethan lingered with the groomsmen across the hall. Juliana, tasked with fixing a ribbon on Isabella's veil, stepped closer. Isabella held her still, letting her fingers graze Juliana's arm. An innocent gesture outwardly, but inside her mind, she leaned in hard, listening. Stay calm. Just smile. She doesn't know. She can't know. Ethan promised we'd be careful. A rush of fury burned Isabella's throat, but she held her expression placid, even kind. Juliana's slip confirmed everything. Not only did she know about Ethan's feelings, she had colluded with him. They had made promises to one another. Good. That meant they were vulnerable. When the coordinator called Ethan over for a quick rehearsal walk, Isabella seized her chance. Juliana, will you walk with him, just for the practice? It'll calm his nerves, she suggested sweetly. Juliana froze, a deer caught in headlights. Ethan hesitated, his jaw tightening before his lips curved into a practiced smile. Of course. If the bride wants it, he said smoothly. The coordinator, oblivious, waved them forward. As Ethan and Juliana walked side by side down the empty aisle, Isabella's focus sharpened. Outwardly, they looked composed, their distance respectable. But inside, their minds betrayed them. Ethan, don't brush her hand. Keep space. Isabella's watching. Juliana, this feels like a trap. Why would she ask us to do this? Isabella nearly smiled. It was a trap, and they were already squirming. When they returned, Isabella made her voice light and teasing, as though she hadn't noticed their stiffness. You two walk so well together. It's almost natural. The bridesmaids giggled, thinking it harmless banter. But Ethan's thoughts hissed with panic. She's watching us. Did she notice? No, just laugh it off. Pretend. And Juliana's mind echoed his. She suspects. I can feel it. We should have been more careful. Perfect. The cracks were widening. As the guests finished seating and the coordinator gathered everyone into position, Isabella's mind spun. Every test she staged exposed more. Ethan and Juliana were paranoid, fragile under pressure, their silent guilt screaming louder than their carefully arranged smiles. The ceremony would be the ultimate stage. But before then, Isabella wanted one more test. One final push. When the coordinator announced a slight delay for the officiant's arrival, Isabella seized the pause. Why don't we all rehearse one more time? She suggested. She pointedly placed Juliana near Ethan again, even closer this time. The panic that surged in their thoughts nearly made her laugh. This is dangerous. She'll see it. Don't betray anything. They didn't realize they already had. By the time the real ceremony was ready to begin, Isabella no longer doubted her strategy. They were crumbling, their thoughts louder than ever, betraying every secret they thought they had buried. Her lips curved into the faintest smile as the music swelled and the double doors opened. It was time to walk down the aisle. Not as a bride, but as an executioner with perfect aim. The heavy double doors swung open, and the swell of music filled the room. Guests rose to their feet, all eyes turning toward Isabella. She stepped into the golden light of the aisle, veil floating like mist, her every movement graceful and deliberate. To them, she was the blushing bride. To herself, she was the storm gathering at the horizon. Her gaze swept the room as she walked. Ethan stood at the altar, smiling his practiced smile, polished enough to fool anyone who couldn't hear the frantic drumbeat of his thoughts. Look at her. Beautiful. Perfect. Just focus on her. Not Juliana. Never Juliana. Not here. The words might have seemed reassuring to another bride, but to Isabella, they were poison dressed as praise. She reached the altar with her pulse steady, her smile unwavering. Ethan took her hand, warm and firm, but his thoughts betrayed the tremor he hid. Hold it together. Just until this is over. Then we'll figure it out. Juliana understands. Juliana. Always Juliana. The ceremony began, words from the officiant washing over the guests, who sighed and dabbed their eyes with tissues. To Isabella, the speeches and vows were background noise. She was listening elsewhere, into the silence beneath Ethan's eyes, into Juliana's still form in the front row. Juliana's gaze was too controlled, her posture too stiff. Inside, however, her thoughts betrayed her. Don't cry. Don't draw attention. Just smile and pretend. Once this is done, we'll find a way. A way? A way to what? To be together? To betray her more fully? The fury inside Isabella built, sharp and focused. She would not wait until after. She would not allow Ethan to tie her into a sham marriage and sneak into Juliana's arms in secret. If they thought they could outmaneuver her, they were fools. As the officiant reached the part about vows, Isabella steadied her breathing. Ethan's turn came first. He spoke smoothly, voice warm and affectionate, the perfect groom. But his thoughts seethed underneath. Say the words. Mean them enough for now. She doesn't know. She can't know. When it was her turn, Isabella did not speak the vows immediately. She let the silence linger, the audience leaning in, curious. Her eyes moved from Ethan to Juliana, then back again, and in that pause, she heard something new, an unguarded whisper from Ethan's mind, unshackled by his nerves. It should be Juliana standing here. Not Isabella. Juliana. The words slammed into her like a thunderclap. There it was. Not vague affection, not hidden longing, but a declaration. A confession. Clear and damning. Isabella's lips parted slightly, her chest rising with the weight of the moment. This was the evidence she needed, the undeniable truth. Her smile returned, soft and serene, hiding the storm behind it. I do, she said, but her mind burned with a plan. The ceremony concluded, applause filled the air, and the couple turned toward the cheering crowd. Isabella's grip on Ethan's hand tightened, not out of love, but control. She wasn't done yet. The reception would be her stage, the banquet hall her battlefield. She now had the final weapon. His unguarded confession, etched into her mind. All that remained was to choose her moment, to pull the veil from the truth in front of every single guest. Ethan thought he had won, that he had locked her into his lie. He had no idea she was about to burn the entire illusion to the ground. The ballroom glittered with celebration. Glasses clinked, laughter rippled, and the scent of roses mingled with champagne bubbles in the air. Guests moved between tables, their faces glowing with joy, believing they were witnessing a perfect love story. But Isabella knew better. She sat at the head table, her hands still loosely clasped with Ethan's, her smile effortless yet hiding blades beneath. Inside, she was timing every move, waiting for the perfect moment to cut the mask away. Ethan leaned close, whispering, "You were incredible today." His voice was smooth, but his thoughts betrayed him. She believed it. Everyone did. Juliana's looking at me again. Stop it, don't look back. Isabella's gaze flickered toward Juliana. She sat 3 tables away, forcing a polite smile, her glass of champagne untouched. Isabella honed in, listening. Soon this will be unbearable. Watching him with her. But we'll figure something out. We always do. Always do. The words reverberated in Isabella's mind. This wasn't some fleeting fancy. It was a betrayal cultivated, fed, and nurtured right under her nose. The master of ceremonies tapped his glass, calling for speeches. One by one, family members rose, her mother, his best man, her father, all speaking of love, trust, and devotion. The irony was suffocating. Each toast felt like another weight pressing against Isabella's chest. Another chance for Ethan and Juliana to smirk silently behind their facades. Finally, it was Ethan's turn. He stood, raising his glass high, his smile dazzling. "To my beautiful wife," he began, voice honey smooth. "The woman of my dreams, the one who makes me whole." Applause followed, but Isabella caught the slip of thought beneath the surface. It should have been Juliana. Always Juliana. That was enough. When the clapping died down, Isabella stood slowly, her movements deliberate. The guests leaned in, curious. The bride rarely gave a speech at this point, but her radiant smile promised something worth hearing. Thank you, she began softly, her voice carrying easily over the hush. Thank you all for being here to witness this day. A wedding is supposed to be a union built on love, trust, and truth. Without those things, what foundation do we really have? Murmurs of agreement flowed through the crowd. Isabella let the pause stretch, her eyes scanning every face, until they landed on Juliana. My husband, Isabella continued, her voice still calm, has said such beautiful things tonight. And I'm grateful. But I want to share something even more honest. Something that's been hidden. Ethan's hand tightened around hers, panic seeping into his thoughts. What is she doing? Stop, don't say it. Keep quiet, please. Juliana's eyes widened, her thoughts racing in terror. She knows. Oh God, she knows. Isabella smiled sweetly at them both. While Ethan was reciting vows to me earlier, I heard something even stronger than his promises. He thought, she let the silence coil like a whip, that he wished Juliana were the one standing beside him. The room froze. Forks clattered onto plates. Gasps rippled through the hall. All eyes swung from Ethan to Juliana, and back to Isabella. Ethan stammered, That's absurd. But his face was pale, his mask cracking. Juliana's hands trembled around her glass, unable to speak. Isabella straightened her shoulders, her voice clear and steady. This is not the marriage I agreed to. And I will not stand here and play the fool. She removed her ring deliberately, placing it on the table with a soft clink that echoed louder than any toast. Gasps turned into murmurs, then into whispers of betrayal and scandal. Some guests gawked, others turned on Ethan and Juliana with wide-eyed disbelief. Isabella stepped away from the table, her dress trailing like a banner of triumph. She didn't need to say more. The silence and the exposed truth were louder than any speech she could give. The wedding wasn't ruined. It was transformed into her stage, her victory. Chaos erupted in the ballroom. Guests whispered fiercely among themselves, their shock buzzing louder than the string quartet that had abruptly stopped playing. The golden perfection of the evening shattered into jagged pieces, the kind that cut everyone who dared to touch them. Ethan's face burned crimson as he stumbled to his feet. She's lying, he blurted, his voice cracking under the weight of panic. She's making this up. But the room was already against him. His charm, his practiced composure, none of it could disguise the wild look in his eyes or the tremor in his voice. He looked like a man cornered, stripped bare in front of those he had worked so hard to impress. Juliana tried to speak, but her mouth opened and closed uselessly. Her silence spoke louder than denial ever could. Her flushed cheeks and trembling hands betrayed her, and the glances darting toward her confirmed what many had long suspected. Isabella didn't flinch. She stood tall at the center of the storm, her veil like a halo, her presence commanding. She didn't need to defend herself. Every eye in the room was already measuring the truth, and the scales tipped against Ethan and Juliana. Her father was the first to rise. Isabella, he said, his voice filled with both anger and sorrow. Is this true? Did he? Isabella met his gaze, her expression unyielding. I have no reason to lie, she said firmly. And no desire to humiliate myself. The only humiliation here belongs to those who deceived us all. Gasps and murmurs rippled again, louder now, as the weight of her words sank in. A few guests turned their chairs sharply toward Juliana, who lowered her eyes, unable to meet their stares. Ethan opened his mouth again, but the venom in the crowd's silence silenced him more effectively than any protest. Her mother reached for her, eyes glistening. Isaac, you're so brave, she whispered. The quiet support wrapped around Isabella like armor. The master of ceremonies fumbled for control, clearing his throat awkwardly, but the reception was no longer his to manage. The guests were divided, some gaping in pity for Isabella, others glaring openly at Ethan and Juliana, still others whispering furiously about the scandal unfolding before them. Isabella took the moment to reclaim the stage one last time. She raised her glass, not to Ethan, not to Juliana, but to herself. To truth, she said, her voice ringing clear. And to never mistaking silence for loyalty. The guests, uncertain at first, slowly raised their glasses in return. Some nodded, some even clapped softly, as though applauding her courage. The toast was not joyous, but it was powerful. It belonged to her. Ethan collapsed into his seat, head in his hands, unable to muster a defense. Juliana slipped away quietly, Her exit followed by the sharp eyes and sharper whispers of the crowd. They would not recover easily from this night. Their reputations would carry the stain of betrayal long after the champagne lost its fizz. For Isabella, the ruin of the wedding was not an ending. It was a liberation. She had refused to bind herself to a lie. She had stood tall in the face of betrayal and forced the truth into the open. As she walked from the ballroom, veil trailing behind her like a flag of defiance, Isabella felt lighter than she had in months. Yes, the day had begun with a promise of love and ended in betrayal. But it was not her who had been ruined. It was those who thought her blind, weak, and disposable. And she was none of those things. The night air outside the ballroom was cool, a welcome relief from the suffocating heat of betrayal inside. Isabella stepped onto the hotel terrace, the murmur of guests still echoing faintly behind her. She closed her eyes, inhaling deeply, letting the crisp breeze clear her mind. For the first time all day, she felt she could truly breathe. Her wedding dress still glittered under the dim lantern lights, but to her, it no longer symbolized a union. It was armor, proof of a battle she had entered unprepared yet somehow won. The veil that had once made her feel fragile now felt like a crown. Footsteps approached behind her. Isabella turned to see her father, his expression a mix of sorrow and pride. "I say," he said gently, "I can't imagine what you're feeling. But you handled yourself with such strength. I don't know how you found it in you." Isabella smiled faintly, though her eyes glistened. "I didn't know either, Papa. But I couldn't let them make a fool of me. Not today. Not ever." He placed a hand on her shoulder, steady and warm. "You deserve better than lies. You always have." Others soon trickled out, the loyal ones. Her best friend Lila, who wrapped her in a fierce hug, her mother, who wiped her tears quietly. Cousins who muttered curses about Ethan under their breath. One by one, they came not to pity her but to stand with her, forming a circle of protection around the woman who had just exposed two snakes in their midst. Inside the hall, the celebration had collapsed into awkward clusters of gossip. Ethan sat abandoned, his friends drifting away, unwilling to be tainted by association. Juliana had disappeared entirely, leaving only a trail of whispers. "Do you regret it?" Lila asked softly, when the group settled around her. Isabella thought for a moment, letting the question hang. Regret was complicated. Did she regret discovering the truth? Never. Did she regret that the man she thought she loved had betrayed her with her own sister? Of course. But regret wasn't what filled her chest now. What she felt was clarity. "I regret wasting so much of myself on someone who wasn't worthy," she said finally, her voice steady. "But I don't regret ending it. If I had stayed silent, if I had gone through with it, I'd have been chained to a lie for the rest of my life. At least now I'm free." The group fell quiet, their eyes on her, admiration simmering in their gazes. Isabella wasn't just surviving the scandal. She was owning it, turning shame into strength. Later, when the crowd thinned and the night grew still, Isabella slipped away from the terrace to her room. Alone, she stared at herself in the mirror, studying the woman who looked back. The face was the same, but the eyes were different. Harder, wiser, alive with a fire she hadn't known she carried. Her strange ability had always been a secret burden. Today, it had become her shield, her weapon, her salvation. And she realized she no longer feared it. She had wielded it with precision, not to harm the innocent, but to unmask the guilty. Isabella removed her veil at last, placing it carefully on the vanity. "They thought they could bury me," she whispered to her reflection. "Instead, I buried them. Tomorrow the world would gossip. Tomorrow, Ethan and Juliana would scramble to defend themselves, to twist stories, to find excuses. But the truth was already out there, witnessed by every guest. Isabella didn't need to fight anymore. She had already won. And with that realization came a rare, fragile smile. One not for show, but for herself. Morning sunlight streamed through the curtains, brushing Isabella's face with its gentle warmth. She stirred, not with the heaviness of regret but with the clarity of release. Yesterday had been her wedding day. Today, it was the first day of her new life. The world outside her hotel room was already alive with whispers. Her phone buzzed endlessly on the nightstand. Texts from friends, calls from journalists, messages of sympathy, even nosy acquaintances fishing for details. Isabella ignored them all. She didn't owe anyone more than she had already given. The truth had spoken for itself. Instead, She padded barefoot across the plush carpet and pulled the curtains wide. The city stretched before her, indifferent and unbothered by the chaos of her private world. A new day had come, as it always did, and she found peace in its simplicity. Her mother knocked softly and slipped into the room, carrying a tray of tea. "You should eat," she said, setting it down. "You'll need your strength." Isabella smiled, touched by the small act of care. "Thank you. I didn't think I'd feel hungry again so soon." Her mother sat on the edge of the bed, studying her carefully. "I thought yesterday would break you," she admitted, her voice hushed. "But instead you burned brighter. I've never been prouder." Isabella reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "Maybe it should have broken me. But instead, I think it woke me up. I see everything clearer now. About Ethan, Juliana, even myself. I was so desperate for the fairy tale that I ignored the cracks in the glass. But yesterday, I stopped pretending." They sat together in silence for a while, sipping tea, the bitterness grounding Isabella in the present. For the first time in months, she wasn't thinking about flowers, dresses, or vows. She was thinking about herself, not as a bride, not as someone's wife, but as a woman with her own story. Later, as she packed her belongings, she found the ring Ethan had placed on her finger only hours before. It glimmered in the light, a circle meant to symbolize eternity. She held it for a long moment, then placed it in a small velvet box. Not as a keepsake of love, but as a reminder of her victory, the day she chose truth over illusion. By afternoon, she had checked out of the hotel. As she stepped onto the street, fresh air filling her lungs, she felt lighter with each step. People stared, some recognizing her from the spectacle, others merely admiring the striking woman walking with quiet confidence. She didn't shrink from their eyes. Let them look. Let them talk. She had nothing left to hide. At a cafe across the street, she ordered a coffee and sat by the window. She watched strangers pass, couples holding hands, children tugging at parents, friends laughing together. Life went on, messy and imperfect. And she realized she wanted that. Not the fantasy of a flawless fairy tale, but the authenticity of something real. Her gift, the whispers of thought she could not ignore, would always be with her. For years, she had feared it, hidden it, treated it like a curse. But now, she saw it for what it was, a compass, a safeguard, a truth-teller in a world built on facades. She no longer resented it. She respected it. Isabella lifted her coffee cup, her lips curving into a quiet smile. "To beginnings," she whispered to herself. The wedding had been the end of a lie. Today was the start of her truth. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more original novel stories. And stay tuned, our next story is coming soon.